So you want to learn how to implement Salesforce Field Service fast. This scheduling workshop will get you there. We are going to walk through how Salesforce Field Service can be implemented in a short period of time. If taken the right methodology and the right approach, you could be up and running as little as 4 weeks. Now, mind you, there are a lot of components that we need to dig into. So let's talk about what this workshop will show you. So this is a 4 week program. And the way that we've designed it was the first 2 weeks is going through this document, in addition to hands-on keys, working with the product. We are working in a sandbox and you're using the system. And then the next 2 weeks is how do we roll this out into a production environment and then trying it out with a group of people. And then we spend another 4 weeks where we're either changing, adding another group, enhancing the solution, improving the capabilities. But with this type of workshop, you could get up and running pretty quickly. For mature organizations who have been in business for 20 plus years and have made multiple field service management transitions, the timeline changes significantly, but there's no reason why you wouldn't be able to still also be able to get up and running in 4 weeks. No reason why you shouldn't be able to do it. Now, making it like making your business run, yeah, we might need maybe 4 more months, but it doesn't need to take that long. It really doesn't. I'd like to walk through how we think about scheduling only. So again, getting field service set up from scheduling purposes only. There's a lot of capabilities in Salesforce. So let's just quickly dig into everything in field service. Okay. So, product overview. My name is Leigh-Anne Nugent. I'm a former Salesforce Field Service outbound product manager and success architect. I have been implementing this system for about, I want to say it's not even 10 years yet since the product came out, which I think was 2017. So, not quite 10 years. I'm relatively new to the field service space, but I've been implementing CRM systems for 25 years. So, very well versed in the CRM space, and then just layering on the field service capabilities. Once you fall down that rabbit hole, you can't get out. It's a forever puzzle. So, what's wonderful about what was built here is that we're using the Salesforce platform with core standard objects. We can extend your CRM system in and start to capture work orders, service appointments, things like that. We can even do timesheets and start capturing forms, basic forms. It's a new capability, but we are able to do all of this. And then there's other extensions that we can add on, which have been really wonderful in the App Exchange platform. The managed package is a set of objects, automation, visual force pages, custom permissions that make the scheduling and enhanced scheduling and optimization piece work well. So all the scheduling policies, things like that we're going through today, it's required to have this managed package installed in all of your field service implementations. And then last, we've got the mobile app, which is excellent to use. You've got an offline first solution that is relatively easy to configure. There's a quick way to stand things up, and then there's a right way to stand things up, which does take a little bit more finesse. And you are going to need to understand flows from a different perspective. It's a different set of templates for flows because it needs to be offline ready. There's a lot of capabilities that are not supported, but this is really great. A lot of automation, a lot of screen-based flows, and then also some extensions that can be added to the app too. All right, the goal of this workshop is for you to achieve this first level within 4 weeks. It doesn't have to be so hard, right? Let's really understand how this tool works first, and we will gather your requirements while you already are using the app out of the box. Because what I want you to see are the edges of the app. And I want you to see what they do automatically out of the box. There's a lot of automation here. A lot of thought has been put into the development of this product, taking into consideration our customers. So really take a look at it. That's the whole objective of this workshop. And as you move up this maturity mountain, we will be able to layer in all of these capabilities if we set this foundation up right. So, what does the foundation look like? In this workshop, you will be able to achieve the foundation and automate component. These two flags you'll achieve with a very shorter ramp, like a much shorter ramp towards optimization. The way that I see it is that if I can automate my scheduling, I should be able to optimize it. The reason why we delay optimization is because we need trust. Not only do we need trust, but we need confidence that the solution that we've created works, that the dispatchers trust it, the technicians respect it, and our customers have been satisfied and served. The last thing we need to do is layer on more optimization, more automation, and appointments that should have been scheduled didn't, or they were scheduled, but they fell off because we didn't really understand the way that the data was structured. So usually what we do is we live and breathe in the automation world for a little bit of time so that we understand what's happening in the background. Okay. And part of the reason why we do this is because field service as a domain is very complex. There are a lot of data points that we need to capture. Look at these 6 W's. We've got who will do the work, right? So we need to know who's involved here. Who are these technicians? Who are the dispatchers? What do they need? Who's going to do the work? Then what is the work? Is this long cycle work? Is it complex, meaning multiple people? Do I need or multiple jobs, right? Is it multiple days? Is it repetitive work? So we need to really understand the type of work. We need to know the customer. What are their SLAs? What are their site requirements? Do we need any special access? Is there a language preference that they have? And then with what? What skills? What certifications should our technicians have when they're performing the work? Are there special tools? Are we going to manage inventory? And then when are we going to do the work? We need to know when we can go on site, when it's due. Did we promise a window? We need to know all of that. And then we need to know where it is. So, for better or for worse, there's a data point to represent all of these, everything that you're seeing here. So, if we aren't capturing the right data, we're not going to be able to schedule. So, we are going to set this up right the first time so that you can get to scheduling fast. Who is in field service? The most important thing is who here. We are human centered. We like to think about the personas and the key jobs to be done. What are they really trying to accomplish? And then we also like to think about the emotional jobs associated to it because we really want to empathize with these users and these personas. We want to make their lives better, right? So thinking about the customer who's frustrated because the machine that they have is broken or the air conditioning unit is broken during a heat wave. The customer service agent is the person who's the first point of contact of that frustrated customer. How hard must it be to spend all day dealing with agitated people? If you don't have access to the right data in order to help these customers, how sad must you feel? You feel disappointed and frustrated. So the emotional jobs are just as important as the jobs to be done. Think about a dispatcher. They're overwhelmed with the hundreds, if not thousands, of appointments that need to get scheduled in a day. Tires get blown on the road. Some jobs take longer than usual. Some parts go missing, and so jobs can't be finished. People call in sick. Customers cancel. Customers don't show. These are the folks that are making sure that there is always a job scheduled for a technician, that they're staying busy, that customers are being satisfied, that jobs aren't getting slipped or missed. And then our frontline workers, they're the ones that arrive on site. And are they arriving on site to a customer that's been appeased? Are they still frustrated? Is the customer going to take it out on the technician? What happens if the technician doesn't have all the right tools? Now they've disappointed that customer again. They don't want to be put in that position. So thinking about the job that needs to be done and the emotional job that's tied to it really makes sure that you deliver a product that makes that end user a superhero and a star for that customer. Okay, we really want this for our users. Access is driven by permission sets. We have for each persona a license and a permission set. Some of them are paid, some of them are not paid. We will go in and look at your contract and make sure that we understand what licenses are available and that you've got enough to perform what you need to do. Remember that you have an option to schedule assets. So if you're a crane operator, you could schedule one crane and a crane operator. An asset that's schedulable will have to be a user. So there would be a license associated to that. Don't worry about the pricing. Your account executive takes care of you. And if there's volume pricing, like all those things, there's lots of levers that can be pulled. Just if you need all of these things, just talk to your account executive and be real about it because the more you buy, the bigger the discount sometimes. So just make sure you want to run your business right. So don't cut corners. It's not worth it not to save money when they've got strings that can be pulled in the back end. So don't worry about that. Okay, let's get into the basics. All right. North Stars, metrics. If we aren't governed by our metrics, we don't know where we're going and we don't know if we're doing the right job. So we are going to talk about KPIs and we're going to talk about what your desired outcomes are and what KPIs will support those desired outcomes. These are usually what we see, but we'll work with you, and setting the North Star is always the first place we need to go. The second place we need to go is, where are we now? So what's our point A? Now that we know what our point B is, and then we need to close the gap. Not only do we need to know what needs to be implemented to close the gap, but we need to know who will be involved in the team. So we'll validate that we've got the right people doing the right things at the early stage of this workshop. Will be comprised of three components. The first piece will be around the work, how we're structuring it, then the workforce and how we're structuring it, and then the scheduling policies, which is the engine that makes that magic happen of matching a service resource to a work. Really, it's just who can do the work. It's the magic behind that. Okay. So, as we're going through our workshop together, we will go through all of the different elements of a work order, find out exactly how we're going to model the work. Then we'll move over to your workforce, how we're going to model that. We'll learn also where data is stored today, what integration needs to be had, what supporting data needs to be imported, like historical data, reference data like products or inventory, things like that. But we're going to keep things very basic. We don't need inventory to start scheduling. So let's just get to the basics first. That is the critical cornerstone element of any field service project. Okay. So we're going to start with the basics and then we're going to layer in. However, we will do the discovery to find out all of the features and we'll start building out the roadmap. Okay. So, to give you an idea of how scheduling works, the scheduling policy ultimately is a collection of rules and objectives. The rules are a filter, yes or no. And if a resource says fulfills all of the rules, not or, right? All of the rules, then they will be filtered to be considered for the job. Then we take the objectives, which then determine out of all of these resources who is the best and then what is the best time slot for that resource. Okay, so it's really looking at all of the time slots for all of the resources and picking the right time slot for that job. So here's what it looks like. We've got, what is this? 12 resources. We have rules. The first rule is geography. We want to make sure that if we're scheduling somebody for the US, that person is based in the US. We could get even granular and say if they're in Phoenix, Arizona, then we want to match resources that are covering Phoenix. So that's the first slice. It's the best slice geography always does, it's the most performant. Okay. We almost have to do this. Then skills. Who can actually do the job? You don't want to send a plumber to do an electrician's job. Just saying. And then due date. Who can get this done? Who is available to solve this or fix this problem or get this job done before the due date? And it looks like we've got these three. Now, you can layer in other custom rules if you want, but now we look at our objectives. We could minimize our travel. We could determine who can get there faster. And then if there's a preferred resource, meaning Astro's been on site multiple times and the customer really loves Astro, then Astro will be a preferred resource and would be graded higher than the other two, as an example. But in this case, this is what the grades look like for each resource. And it looks like Hootie won the race. And so Hootie will be the one to be scheduled for that appointment. There he goes. All right. In field service, we've got conflicting goals. We will always have a trade off. It sucks, but it's true, right? If you want to grow revenue and increase the number of jobs per day, now you're competing against workforce retention. They're burnt out. They can't get the job done, let alone correctly, right? They don't even know how to do the job. So you got to be really considerate and realistic of what exactly you're trying to accomplish here. And then just don't think for the quarter, be a little bit more three horizons thinking minded, right? There's short term, medium term, and long term. What will benefit across all three horizons? You really do have to be brutally honest with yourself. If we're trying to grow our jobs a day, but I can't retain any workers, what's the point? So customer experience is important. If a customer doesn't re-sign with us, then how are we going to stay in business? But we also want to make sure that we're not spending in overtime. So while customer experience is like they wish that they could call us 24/7, I can't staff for that. It's expensive to pay overtime. Plus, again, I got to think about workforce retention. So all of these are competing factors. So be mindful and we'll be realistic and we'll tell you, yes, you can do that at the expense of worker satisfaction, customer satisfaction, cost reduction, whatever it is. Okay. So just a little example of what that looks like. Now, here is why Salesforce Field Service is such a helpful tool. We won't be implementing this right away, but this is where we're moving towards as we move across up the maturity mountain. If one service resource has 6 appointments, how many different scheduling possibilities are there? 720 combinations. And if you think about calculating travel between each one, you're not doing that with drag and drop. You're not doing that with an Excel spreadsheet. You might not be able to fit all 6 in if you've ordered it incorrectly. And now travel, you're spending more time behind the windshield than you are with the wrench. Double it up. It exponentially makes the combinations grow. It's not even like double, it's exponential. We're in the trillions now. Now you've got a group of 5 resources. So this is a real problem that dispatchers face every single day. And if you're not thinking about this, and then yeah, you're gonna be inefficient. The cost to serve is going to be incredibly high. And then the stress levels, you're gonna need to hire more. People are gonna be behind all the time. You're gonna have jobs that haven't been scheduled. You're gonna be missing appointments. It's just too much. I'm just getting into the scheduling policies, working backwards so that you know how the end results work. So we've got a number of ways that we can schedule, and these are just the components. I just want to breeze through this really quickly, but we will jump through all of the various scheduling policies that we have with weights, and ultimately this is what it boils down to. And we want to be able to create multiple policies. Multiple scheduling policies give us the most flexibility. There could be some times where we don't need to match on skills. There could be some times where we are okay grabbing from a different territory. There could be times where, right, there could just be times where we don't want to get there so fast. We can have different combinations. All right, let's get to modeling the work. A work order line item and service appointments. These are the stars of the work order, okay, of the work of the job that needs to be done. The way that you model the work will vary depending on what exactly you're doing. So we will have workshops to talk about a day in the life of a job, a typical job, or a set of services that you provide. So you would describe to me what they look like. And we would decide work order represents a job. A work order line item could represent the assets that you're going to service while you're on the job site. A work order line item could also be the work types, right? So you could be working on multiple assets, but each work type, there could be different work types because you might need to schedule someone different for each work type. So you'll be working on an asset, but there'll be two work order line items, one for the mechanical piece and one for the electrical piece, for example. So depending on what your needs are, we would talk about that and how we would model it. Okay, so lots of objects, lots of related objects, which means these data points need to be created. But for our purposes, we don't need to get into all of that jazz. This is really what we need to focus on. What is the job? How are we going to structure it? The service appointment represents when we're going and who was assigned to. Okay, so we can talk about the other ways to model the work if you've got a project scenario, but we walk through all of the different options with you and then we'll choose the right one. Fundamentally, this is all we need. Everything that's in this column here. We need to know who it's for. Is there a service contract? But again, at a bare minimum, we just need an account, maybe a contact. Where? For sure, we need the address. When's the earliest it can be performed? Probably the day that the customer calls in. And then the due date, the default is 7 days. You can adjust that. So when we first start this program, all you're doing is just setting up the 7 days default, and then we'll show you how it works and how it can change. And then we think, are there skills required? What's the duration of the job? The duration will be important too, so we'll need that for sure. Skills will be optional. If it's relatively light and simple, then we might bake that in. But then you also might need some forms and you might need some work plans. So that would be something that we would layer in later on. Inventory, work plans, work steps, data capture, things like that. We'll just show you how you can get started with scheduling and scheduling alone, and then we'll grow into some of these additional capabilities. So this is how we would model the work. You tell us a story. We've got a customer that's completed a contract for this particular project in this location, and this particular service is for some sort of expert on whatever cadence, and that aligns to this technology or this service or this type of skill, right? Like it'll depend. And then it'll talk about the times and the date and the duration and how we would want to schedule it. And ultimately, it boils down to these data points. These are fields on the record. We'll extract those fields from the story you tell us. We'll walk through all these design decisions together. We'll ask you these questions and then you'll give us some response, and we'll keep this as our ongoing punch list. Okay. So these are the key objects and attributes that we need on the work order in order to get to scheduling. Okay. And then we'll also need the same similar stuff, data points on the service appointment. Now let's talk about the workforce. On a service appointment, we're determining where the work is going to be taking place, which is the service territory. Each service territory has a collection of service territory members, which are the service resources. So what's happening is we're asking the service appointment to go look at its related service territory members, all of those service resources, check all their skills and their availability, and see if they are a good fit to fulfill this service appointment. We need to check their availability. So their availability could be captured either as a shift or operating hours. We will talk to you about it. We today are going to focus only on operating hours. And this is really what we're driving towards. These are the minimum data points that we need: availability, the service territory memberships, and maybe the skills. Okay. This is ultimately what the structure would look like. This is a scenario if we've got multiple service appointments for with multiple techs, but we would model something like this out for you. So, like before, we would tell a story. Each service resource lives in a certain country, in a time zone, things like that. And we would, again, ultimately, these are data points to capture on the service resource record and its related objects. And here's what that data table would look like. Now, back to scheduling solutions. As a reminder, what are we creating? We would go through all of the different work rules and establish which ones we plan to use. We might have multiple, right? So, multiple policies. At the end of the day, we'll have a flow like this. And at this point, we would break. Okay. This would be the end of the first, let's say, week. And by the end of the first week, you will have access to the mobile app. Your sandbox environment will be configured. And we're going to spend the second week running through a few jobs, working through the service delivery lifecycle so that you have an understanding of what happens at each stage so that we can then configure each stage after that. Okay. The stages are really important. The statuses, we have a work order and we've got a service appointment. Gosh, if we have a work order line item, we would insert a middle column for that status. So there's definitely a lot of discussion that we have here, which is why we would break it up. This is a natural breaking point in the workshop. So consider this week too. We would talk about all the typical user stories, the different personas based off. So that chart would totally be unique to your business. And then we would talk through the new status. So who's involved? What are the jobs to be done? What are the data points that we need to capture? And then what's the criteria to move to the next status? So we go through more understanding of what is involved in creating the service appointment. There are 6 date time fields. Well, there's 8 actually, but there's 6 that are required for scheduling. We would talk about the earliest start and the due date. This is required and mandatory for every single service appointment. The earliest start permitted likely will be today and or right now because you can't schedule an appointment or start to schedule an appointment yesterday as much as the customer would want you to do that. No, the earliest I can go there is right now. And maybe not right now because anyways, it could be right now. Okay. The due date by default is 7 days. So we'll start with the default 7 days. The arrival window start usually gets populated when you're using the book appointment action. It's not always needed. There's also an option to have fixed start. Some people have virtual remote assistant calls that are being scheduled. So if it's happening at 10 o'clock, it's happening at 10 o'clock. The arrival start, the arrival end is 10 o'clock, which means the scheduled start is 10 o'clock. Okay. So that's how we make sure that we are in guaranteeing the start time happens when we say it's going to happen. Okay. Note that the actual start and end date is available to you to populate, usually is done when we change the status of an appointment from whatever, either in progress into in progress and then into complete. So once the status is changed to in progress, we stamp actual start. And then once we change the status to complete or not cannot complete, the actual end is stamped. The way that this works is the scheduling rules ensure that the scheduled start is oops, where am I here? The scheduled start is between the arrival start and end date and between the earliest start and due date. We also have to make sure that the scheduled end happens before the due date. So we will not ever, the scheduled engine will never schedule an appointment if it's past the due date. So a lot of data considerations to think about. What if we miss the due date? Those are all the exception scenarios that we will have to talk about that usually happens in the second phase of the implementation, right? So, first phase is the first 4 weeks. We're getting appointments scheduled, we're getting them done. We're hoping there's no exceptions. We're just handling the standard path. Then we move into the second phase. The next 4 weeks can be about what exceptions are we seeing? And we prioritize those exceptions, right? So a lot of the times we are seeing some appointments get missed. And then a lot of the times we're saying, oh, you know what, let's get maintenance in there. So we're either adding a feature or we're cleaning up some and tackling some exception scenarios. All right, more design decisions for what happens when you're in the new status. And then we get into scheduling. Scheduling is, there are many ways to schedule. We want to know who's going to schedule, when they're going to schedule. Is it going to happen automatically? Honestly, a customer could schedule, right? So if a customer's scheduling, a lot of this doesn't matter. But what we are doing is the scheduler, dispatcher, they have to validate that all of the data points that they need for the technician to get it done is there. Are all the parts there? Do we have the right people with the right skills? If it got scheduled, then the answer is yes. But you still want to validate that the customer is available. Here are all of the various ways that you can schedule an appointment. Book appointment sets the arrival window start and end. Candidates does not. Candidates is really only good if you know for sure you need to assign it to a particular person. Otherwise, choose book appointment because the customer is more customer friendly. They know when it's going to happen, but at the end of the day with candidates, you don't really know exactly when it's going to get scheduled. This is just the earliest it could get scheduled. Okay. It's not really the same as a book appointment. Okay. We can also do the same thing in the dispatcher console. So only dispatchers with a license have access to the dispatcher console who can leverage this. The other one, pretty much anybody can use that book appointment action with the term, of course. Optimization is a future step. So at this point, we're just introducing you to all of the different options that you have. It's pretty robust. So we are just going to walk you through so that you know the direction that you're going. Okay. And we go in detail on what those different scheduling tools are, and we'll see about when will we leverage this. Okay. We have to understand when this is going to be dispatched. The idea between scheduled versus dispatched, scheduled is a soft schedule. It's on the board. We at least know there's someone available who can do the job and it could move. So maybe the customer doesn't know, maybe the tech doesn't even know. Sometimes we schedule 3 to 6 weeks out in advance so that we have an idea of our capacity and where we might need to augment our staffing, but the dispatch is ultimately what's locked in. This will not move. Customer has been alerted, texts know that it's coming, right? So these are the things that we need to think about. This can be done manually, in bulk, or automatically. I like en route, even though it's optional. I always bring it up because if you are wanting to track travel, how else are you going to know that they're driving, right? If you change the status to en route, then at least we have a data point to know that they've done one job and another one. There is automatic status transition that could be leveraged, but I usually grow into that capability once trust has been established. And once we start hearing from technicians, I'm sick and tired of changing the status. So we just got to give it a little bit of time and comfortable in app savviness, give the tech some time to get used to it. Okay, more design decisions. And then once you're in progress, we do want to capture the actual start. And then we have to think about photos. What are they doing while they're on site? What kind of checklists do they need? What forms do they need? What data needs to be captured? So we will dig into what happens on site. There is a conversation to what happens if they can't finish or how many days are they there, things like that. When we move to complete, this is where we want to know like what data points do we want to capture, like actual and we want service notes. Are we going to capture parts consumed? We want to talk about the service report, get signature, how many signatures. A lot of this stuff, there's a lot that goes on in complete. And then what we need to know is if the service appointment is complete, does that mean the work order is complete, or is there another step that needs to take place before we complete the work order? There could be some back office stuff. There could be an audit. There could be a quality check. Someone comes in to just verify the job is done correctly. So we need to really understand what is happening at the complete status. And then same thing with the cannot complete status, because sometimes we can't get the job done. Either the customer needed to leave and we had to get out of there before we could finish, or we didn't have a part, or it turned out that we needed to replace it. So many scenarios. So we do need to know. And then we also want to know what notifications and would we let a technician schedule while they're on site, things like that. Then we'll talk about canceled, and there's lots of other considerations. So we constantly update this workbook with every single engagement that we have. We're always looking to simplify the first few phases of your field service implementation with Salesforce. There is a way to make it easy, not complex. If you follow this tried and true way of implementing it, I do promise you will be more successful. You will have people using the system with confidence, and it'll keep growing, right? The more you use it, the better return on your investment you'll get, and you'll be far better off because of it. If you follow this approach, take an iterative, agile mindset that's customer first or human centered, you will win every single time. So I'm excited for you. I really think that this is an important workshop for anyone considering getting Salesforce Field Service for the first time. You want to do it right the first time. For some customers, they might have some uh-oh feeling and they're turning on enhanced scheduling and optimization, wondering why it's not working. You might have to go through this process again. And again, it's just 4 weeks, right? We can reset and get things going, and then you're back on path to move towards scheduling and optimization and move forward. This is a highly intensive, it is intensive, but the returns that you're going to get out of this workshop is going to be immense. So I look forward to speaking with you. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. But I think this is going to be an important workshop for you to participate in.